Having had some more time with the Analogue Pocket, I want to take a look and see how it compares to some other products out there that offer similar functionality. I hesitate to call these direct competitors because ultimately the actual goal for each of these products is a little bit different. How they handle it, quality level, all that kind of stuff varies. But the most important thing they all have in common is they all give you a way to play your Game Boy cartridges on another screen using a controller. So we're going to be looking at the Analogue Pocket, the Epilogue GB operator, and the Hyperkin Retron Sq. Before we get to the comparisons, let's just take a look at each individual product, starting with the Analogue Pocket. Now, I did already do one full video focused on this last week. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure to check it out. And if you enjoy that video in this one, make sure to subscribe as well. The main takeaway with the Analogue Pocket, though, is that, like many other Analogue products, it is a very pricey but very nice way to be able to play your Game Boy games on the go. Now, like with these other devices, it gives you the ability to hook it up to a TV to play, but that does require a separate item you also have to buy, which is the Pocket dock, and with these combined, you get a full setup that more or less works like a Game Boy Switch. You can pop your Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance cartridges, there's an adapter for Game Gear, they have adapters for other handheld games coming out in the future, and you can play them either on the go with the Pocket with that very nice screen, or put it in the dock very seamlessly. Of the three we're taking a look at today, the Pocket is the most expensive out of the group, especially when you include the dock price as well. And there's a few very good reasons for that. Of the three, it's the only one that actually is a fully functioning handheld and not just a way to dock Game Boy games. And also very importantly, it is the only one that relies on hardware level emulation. Rather than relying on software that emulates the way that older Game Boy hardware works, the Pocket relies on a pair of FPGAs which are able to actually on a hardware level act like a Game Boy. Now, the middle price kind of option out of this set is the Hyperkin Retron Sq. It's also the most readily available out of the three we're talking about. The Pocket has pre-orders open that ship very far in the future at this point. The GB operator, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is something that you can order, but it's still released in waves, so you have to wait sometimes a month or so for it to ship. Whereas with the Retron, this is just available on Hyperkin's site. There are also a lot of retro stores that I've been to that just carry them on the shelves. It's generally something that's just a little easier to find than the other options. Now, unlike the Pocket, the Retron is not a handheld. It's not something that allows you to play Game Boy games with a different display. Rather, it is a dedicated dock setup for your Game Boy games. So you pop the cart into the system, hook it up to a TV. It ships with a USB controller that you can use with it, although there are options to use other ones as well, and you're good to go. Now, I actually reviewed the Retron SQ earlier this year, and I had a couple major hangups with it at the time, some of which have been fixed. The biggest of which is the ability to play GBA games. At launch, the firmware for the Retron just did not run GBA games very well. I had them in the incorrect aspect ratio, the frame rate was an absolute nightmare, and over time, they released a 1.2 update that fixed a lot of this. Game Boy Advance games now not only display in their proper aspect ratio, but also run much more smoothly. With that in mind, there are still some problems I had with it that are still existent, and the main thing really has to do with how it handles software emulation and game saves. Unlike the other systems, which will actually make full use of the saves on your Game Boy cart, the Retron SQ instead basically dumps the files of your Game Boy cartridge into the system and runs everything on software emulation. It still relies on the cartridge to do a kind of initial check, but ultimately it's running everything through the emulator in the system. What this ends up doing is, if you have any save files intact when you dump them onto the system, those will be available to play on, but it basically acts as a separate timeline from there on. Anything you save is going to be saved to the Hyperkin's own memory. It will not be saved to the Game Boy cart itself. Now, the reason for this is because Hyperkin didn't want to risk causing data corruption on people's carts. They wanted to make sure that people would use their product and not accidentally break their Game Boy games at the same time, which, yes, that would be a much bigger problem to have, but it doesn't change the fact that if you are interested in something that gives the ability to swap between playing on the Retron and playing on a traditional Game Boy handheld, you're not going to be able to do that. You can do that to play the games, but not necessarily to continue the same save file. In some ways, this can also be a little bit of a boon. For instance, maybe you have a classic save file from your Pokemon games that you don't want to lose, but you still want to be able to maybe do a fresh playthrough. Well, this gives you the option to dump that save file to the Retron, restart, still have your old saves intact on the cart that has that good old childhood nostalgia attached to it, but then have a fresh, clean save file you're doing on the Retron. So it's a bit of a give and take. I can see the benefits and merits of this kind of separate timeline approach that I think some people will find useful, but ultimately, if your goal is to do that kind of swap back and forth, it's not going to be able to do that for you. And then this brings us to the GB operator. Now, I actually haven't done a dedicated video about this one before. This is my first time really talking about it on camera, and it's a very interesting, different product from the others. First off, it is the cheapest option at $50. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not something where you could just buy it and get it the next day, but it is released in waves that seem to happen fairly regularly, so the wait time isn't terrible. But it also works a bit differently from the others. Compared to the Pocket, which relies on a dock to connect to a TV that's still running through the Pocket itself, and the Retron that connects directly to a TV, the GB operator actually acts as a PC accessory. So you cannot hook it up directly to a TV screen and use it as is, but you can connect it to a PC or laptop to then play the Game Boy carts that are inserted into it. The really unique thing about the GB operator, though, is its heavy emphasis on save states and being able to manipulate them. Basically, it works similar to the Retron Sq, where it is ultimately relying on software emulation to play these games and doesn't do it on a hardware level like the Pocket does. But unlike the Retron, it does allow you to save things to the Game Boy card. And on top of that, it actually gives you a little more freedom to manipulate and mess around with these saves. Let's use Pokemon as an example. Pokemon is a game that you can only ever have a single save file of at a time. With this, you could create multiple save files and different save states that are recorded on the GB Operator's app and then load them onto the cart depending on which one you want to play. A really practical aspect of this that's worth keeping in mind is that because Game Boy games rely on an internal battery to keep a save file alive, well, if the battery's getting old and you need to replace it, normally replacing the battery would wipe the save data because you have to remove it. With the GB Operator, you could dump that save file, have it saved there and stored safely, swap the batteries in your Game Boy cart, and then bam, reload them using the operator. Aside from all the save state manipulation, the operator does allow you to just simply play these games on your computer as well in its own window. You can use whatever controller you want to use with your PC. So there's a freedom with this that is really nice, especially considering it is the cheapest of the group. One thing that I think is important to point out real quick is that while right now the operator is the only one out of these three systems to really have this heavy focus on save state manipulation, this is something that the Pocket will be offering in a form down the line. The Pocket does offer a save and load state option as a beta feature, but it only works while a cart is running. The moment you turn the cart off, switch carts or whatever, those save states are gone. But there is a future firmware update planned that will be adding additional functionalities where you can save multiple save states to the SD card, swap them over on the cartridge, all that kind of good stuff. So this isn't necessarily a permanently unique feature of the operator, but as of right now, for those of you that have these different things on hand, the operator is the only one that's going to give you that option at the moment. So you can see why I don't really consider these things to be direct competitors. They ultimately are all trying to do different things, but the one area we can very nicely directly compare them in is how they handle allowing you to play a game on an additional screen. And it's actually here that there are a lot more similarities, although one particular difference is really interesting to talk about. As of right now, at least, the Hyperkin and Epilogue don't really give you controls over how the emulation is being handled. The Epilogue does have a grayed out option for emulator settings. That is a option coming soon, but right now there's just a sort of default setting palette that is being used, while the Pocket does give you some ways to adjust this image. In terms of similarities, both the Epilogue GB operator and the Hyperkin Retron SQ run games in a sharpened kind of style that look the same as the Pocket running with sharpness turned up to max. The Pocket does give you the option to reduce this sharpness if you want to have a kind of slightly blurrier image, something that feels a little more like the old school display. And in some cases, especially with the GBA games, I actually really like how this looks on a larger screen. I don't turn it off all the way, but adding just a little bit of blurriness for some titles, in my opinion, does look nice. When you look at the default mode, though, for the Analogue Pocket docked up against the other two systems, when it comes to GBA and Game Boy Color games, they look very much the same. Where you end up encountering a very interesting divergence, though, is how each of these systems handles original Game Boy. With the Analogue Pocket, it is playing Game Boy games as if it was being played on a regular Game Boy using a grayscale style visual. In handheld mode, you do have the ability to manipulate this and change it to look like different forms of handheld Game Boys, like the original Game Boy or how it would look on a Game Boy Light. But in dock mode, you just have this grayscale mode to work with, along with the option to choose color palettes similar to a Game Boy Color, but it does not display in whatever would be the native Game Boy Color for a given game. There is a customization option for this that appears to be grayed out for the moment, but the idea is in the future you can customize a palette to look like how a game would play on a Game Boy Color if you wanted. Meanwhile, the Retron Sq displays games like they would be if they're being played on a Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance. So whatever color palette that game would look like on those systems, that's what the emulated version you're seeing on the Retron ends up reflecting. So for example, the game that I'm using here with Pokemon Red, instead of that grayscale look you're getting on the Analogue Pocket, the Retron SQ is showing it with this red and green, which is how it looks on the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance. The GB operator, on the other hand, has what is probably the most surprising of the three, though, in that instead of playing how it would look on a regular Game Boy, it instead favors how it would look on a Super Game Boy being played on a Super Nintendo. In the main example we're using here for Pokemon, it does use that Super Game Boy palette where different areas you're going to are doing a different full color across the screen. Individual Pokemon are getting more color variants, so this is resulting in a noticeably different looking experience than the other two. Worth noting again, the GB operator does have a emulator settings option that is currently grayed out, so potentially in the future you might be able to choose different modes for this. The GB operator does also allow you to simply download the ROM off of your cartridge if you wish, so you can use an emulator of your choice. So there's a little more room here to preserve your games and play them the method you want. But in terms of just using the GB operator software directly, this is how things are currently running. I do also just want to talk about a little bit in terms of the ease of use of using each of these systems in a docked mode. One of the things I do really like about the Pocket, again, is how it is very similar to a Switch in that you can be playing on the Pocket and then dock it, and it switches over to the display right away. You can use a wireless controller that's synced with the Pocket dock in order to wake it up from sleep and play it, and so there's just a very sort of user-friendly experience with the Pocket that is personally my favorite out of the group. But the other two are still perfectly functional. The Retron feels like an older system. It comes with a wired cable. You have to manually turn it on by walking up to the system. Ultimately, at the end of the day, not that big of a deal in my opinion, especially for how much cheaper it is as an option. While the GB operator, again, is something that is used with PCs, so it doesn't really offer that same kind of TV experience the others do unless you have a TV PC setup going on. But again, this does come with, I think, its own unique benefits in how it can be used with a laptop or with your main PC setup, and there are a whole lot of other functional things, again, that this operator opens up the others don't currently offer. Ultimately, I've really come to enjoy my experience using all three of these. They do have different emphases. The Pocket obviously is the most expensive and really premium experience when it comes to being able to use it as a handheld as well, but in terms of using them just as a dock solution, they're all really excellent. One that I do want to give a little extra attention to real quick is just the Retron, because I did previously review it and I didn't really like that early on experience with the older firmware due to the lack of sharpening, the incorrect aspect ratios, the very heavy problems it had running GBA games, and basically all of this has been addressed with the latest version of the firmware. So having games in their proper aspect ratio and just the way that everything runs and looks now is a lot better than it was previously. Again, I really ended up loving all of these products. They all have their individual strengths and main focuses. If you're interested in any of them, I do have links down below. The wait for some of them is quite a bit longer, like with the Analogue Pocket, but if you're interested in any of them, I do have them linked down below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.